Operation Anaconda, Chapter 3. The phone rang again 5 minutes later, and Mr. Bacco answered it immediately. He put it on speaker, and the three men heard the same calm voice. You will bring the plans upriver to the village of Salawi. You must send one person only, by boat, and stop at the small wooden dock that is next to the village. He must arrive before sunset tomorrow, and if we see any police or hear any helicopters, the girl dies. The line went silent, and Idris looked at Quentin. They chose the river. That means they know the area well. Mr. Bacco handed Quentin a thick envelope. These are the false plans. I must say, they look real, and only an engineer familiar with the mine could see the differences. Quentin opened the envelope and checked the papers carefully. The diagrams showed floor plans, mine shafts, pumps, pipes, and pressure systems. Hold on, Quentin said suddenly. The kidnapper instructed us to send one person. If they see Idris and me, they'll suspect something. Don't worry, Idris said. They are not expecting a Mortex employee to go all the way upriver alone. Anyone who doesn't know the jungle will need a guide. I'll be the skipper and guide. It's the perfect cover. Quentin shrugged his shoulders. Okay, I suppose you know this country better than I do. Let's hope they do not study the plans too closely, though. Idris left the room and returned 30 minutes later with 2 rucksacks, each one a different color. He opened one to show Quentin the contents: a flashlight, a rope, water bottles, and a small first aid kit. Quentin swapped some clothes from his suitcase into the backpack and then slipped the envelope inside. We have to leave now, Idris said. The river is long and dangerous, and the trip there will last about 12 hours. I have reserved a boat with a full tank of fuel, so we can get there and back with no trouble. Within an hour, they left the city in a company vehicle, and the road quickly became narrow and dusty. Forest replaced buildings, and the air grew heavy and smelt of greenery. After 2 hours, they reached the river, and Quentin was amazed at how wide it was. It was a light brown color, moving fast between the trees where shadows seemed to be waiting for them. An old man sat on a barrel at the jetty next to the small company boat that rocked in the water. Quentin looked at the water as Idris untied the rope. Are you sure this is safe? The auditor asked. No, replied Idris, but there is no other way. We will need to keep our eyes open, as there are animals that want to eat us for dinner, and obstacles hiding under the surface just waiting for us to crash into them. They climbed into the boat, and Idris started the engine. In no time at all, they moved slowly away from the dock, and the boat chugged its way up the river. The city disappeared behind them, and the jungle closed in on both sides. The river current was indeed strong, and Idris held the steering wheel tightly. Stay low when I tell you, he said. The boat hit small waves and bounced hard, causing water to splash over the sides and into the boat. Quentin grabbed the edge and tried to stay balanced, but the more the boat swung, the sicker he felt. After an hour, the river became narrower, and Quentin's stomach was considerably emptier. Then rocks appeared above the surface. Rapids, Idris said. Hold on. The boat moved with more difficulty now, and Idris had to turn the wheel quickly to avoid the rocks. The engine roared, and water crashed around them. Quentin's heart beat fast as the boat tilted to one side, and on more than one occasion he thought they would flip over. Stay calm, Idris shouted, but it didn't help Quentin. Finally, they passed the worst of the rapids and entered calm water, where Quentin breathed a sigh of relief. That was close, he said with a smile. It'll get worse before it gets better, Idris replied, and Quentin's smile disappeared. As the sun moved higher, the heat became intense and the jungle came to life. Birds screamed from the trees, and countless insects buzzed near their faces. Suddenly, Idris slowed the boat. Do not move, he whispered. Quentin looked ahead and froze. Several large shapes stood in the water, and Quentin could hear huge grey bodies moving. Quentin looked ahead and froze. Several large shapes stood in the water, and Quentin could see huge grey bodies moving slowly. Hippos. One of them lifted its head and opened its mouth wide, exposing long, sharp teeth. "If they feel threatened, they'll attack," Idris said quietly as the boat drifted closer. Quentin held his breath when one hippo moved directly in front of them. Idris cut the engine and let the river carry them slowly back down the river. The animals watched in silence until one of the huge animals rushed at them, sending a wave of murky water that pushed the boat sideways towards the riverbank. "Start the engine," Quentin whispered. Idris turned the key and the engine coughed, then started. He turned sharply and moved around the herd to avoid the animals. However, a hippo started swimming behind them, clearly intent on catching them. "Faster," Quentin said. Idris pushed the engine harder and the boat moved away from the animal. After several tense minutes, the river opened again and Quentin wiped the sweat from his face. "I didn't know that hippos were so dangerous." "They kill more people than lions," Idris replied calmly. "We were lucky today." The journey continued for hours and the jungle grew thicker. Surprisingly, there were no signs of villages or roads visible from the river, and as the sun began to fall, Idris slowed the boat. "We cannot reach the drop point before dark," he said. "We will stop here and continue at dawn." They found a small clearing near the riverbank where Idris tied the boat to a tree. Then they carried their bags onto dry ground, and Quentin helped Idris set up a small camp. They built a simple fire and ate in silence, listening to the jungle sounds that grew louder and more frightening as the night came. "Do you trust them to keep Mara alive?" Quentin asked quietly. Idris looked at the fire. "They need the plans, so that gives her value. However, I don't trust the anacondas at all." "The what?" Quentin asked. Idris added a stick to the fire, then explained. "I heard your description of the men. At least one of them had a snake tattoo, and I suppose the other did too. They must be from the anacondas, a group of mercenaries who will do anything for cash, and I mean anything." The fire burned low and Idris took first watch, telling Quentin to get some sleep. After some time, which seemed like just a few minutes to Quentin, Idris shook him gently and said, "You're done." Quentin stood up and walked to the edge of the camp. The jungle was dark and full of strange noises, and he did his best to stay alert, even though his eyes were heavy. He was suffering from jet lag. The air was warm, and the sounds of the droning insects made him feel drowsy. Just as he was about to fall asleep, he heard a branch snap behind him, and he turned round quickly. Something was moving in the darkness.